The joke has been, since this came out, that citizens that we represent actually have more access to information than we do. It is foolery. It is ridiculous and an embarrassment to this council to be expected to follow the path around someone's elbow to get our inquiries taken care of or issues. I had a very simple request, and it was actually an inquiry. You can inquire all you want, and I will not comply with this. If the action is do not respond to Councilwoman DeWeese, then that so be it. But I want you to consider my concerns because of the path of this email that it had to take. Again, Mr. Garza was not able to respond directly to a very simple inquiry about work that we had done on Scenic Highway when the debris was planned to be picked up. I had the email. Mr. Reynolds was forced to respond, please assist. So Mr. Reynolds, who's trying to allow department heads to run their department, is having to intervene in something that simple. But the illogical path that this is taking at this point, that everything must go through the mayor's office. I know Mayor Hayward travels quite a bit, and I'm not even certain he reads emails. I know that he has a staff that supports him and does a good job of it. But so if they're reading those emails, the chief administrator is being left out of the loop of the departments that he has been tasked to run. He is highly qualified. He was hired to do that, yet these are taking a circuitous route to Mr. Asmar for response. He's a special projects chief of staff to the mayor, and the chief administrator is not being allowed to interact with council, which I thought he was doing quite well and represents us well and has, I think, the highest amount of respect for council as far as on the mayor's staff. So we cannot give instruction. We cannot tell staff members what to do on any level. That is something that we would have to resign if we were actually giving instruction to staff people. But to inquire and follow up on a citizen's concern or need and to be blocked from that by this policy is unconscionable. And again, you know, if we just apply the heavy-handed application of this charter that has been interpreted here, then yes, we don't have any recourse. But I'm not going to take it laying down either. This is ridiculous. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yeah, well, I just kind of turned it around last week. I had a call from the purchasing office wanting some information from me, and I says, I'm not allowed to talk to you. They were incredulous. They were incredulous that I refused to answer the question. They pressed me for 5 minutes, and I said, I don't care how many times you ask, I'm not telling you, because I got that memo from the mayor there. And it's, so I think it's silly. I think it'll resolve itself, fizzle out over a period of time. But until it does, I'm going to comply with it and don't have to like it. A little side note, though, is I have two really good friends in the police department. And one of them's a poker buddy of mine, and we get together about once a month. I called him up at the end of last week on his cell phone, and he says, I don't think I'm allowed to talk to you, because now it's gotten all the way down to the troop level there. He says, I'm not sure I'm allowed to talk to you. And of course, I knew exactly where he was going with that, but I think it'll resolve itself over time.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I too found this this memorandum very disturbing. Who actually wrote this? Was that you, Mr. Reynolds? Did you write the cover of this memorandum?
No, sir.
Did you write this, Mr. Messer?
How did I know that question? I guess I'm becoming more astute with working to the council. No, sir.
So, did you review this, Mr. Messer?
No,
before
sir,
it was sent out?
not.
You did not. I was wondering, so then I assume, so does anyone know who wrote this? Was this Mr. Asmar that wrote this, then I assume?
Councilman, I was actually in Wisconsin when it was drafted. I have no knowledge.
Okay. It concerns me not only in this regard, but in any of these leases that get handed off the 7th floor. The Belmont lease recently came out of the 7th floor, and our city attorney, I believe I can remember from recollection, didn't have the opportunity to review that lease. And this concerns me. We have a city attorney for a reason, and I would think legal documents coming out of the 7th floor would be reviewed by our city attorney, which, if I could, do I need to make a motion that we have the same person who gave us this memorandum maybe give us their opinion on Section 4.04 and prohibitions? The last sentence of A, where it talks about the city council may, however, express its views and fully and freely discuss any and all matters with the mayor pertaining to the appointment and removal of city officers and employees. I'd like to have that person explain that to me in a memorandum. And then I'd like to also have that person explain to me in a memorandum Section 4.02 City Council to inquire into the conduct of any municipal office, department, agency, and officers to investigate municipal affairs, and for that purpose may subpoena witnesses, administrative oaths, and compel the production of books, papers, and other evidence. I'd like to get this person who did this memorandum to do memorandums on both of those in the charter, because I find this offensive myself, and I don't like this heavy-handedness that we have to deal with down here, this bullying that it seems like that's occurring here. I mean, you know, to me it becomes somewhat counterproductive. It seemed like we could get on a situation to where we work hand in hand to make this community a better place, but this heavy-handed memorandum I find offensive. But I would like to see if at some point maybe we can get the city attorney at our next committee of the whole to explain to us exactly what both of those mean. So because maybe we need to take a look at the charter a little bit more, and as Councilwoman DeWeese talked about taking a look at it for the letter of the law and some things that maybe we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney, would you take that action and
I'll second
bring...
his motion. I think he,
Yeah, I'll make that as a motion.
He didn't make it into a motion.
Could you make the,
Okay.
I think he was. He said he did.
Got someone in the audience?
Yes. You
Yeah,
did
motion.
make- yeah.
I'll make that as a motion. Thank you.
I seconded that, to have those two parts of the charter addressed.
4.02 A3 and 4.04, the last sentence of A. Thank you.
Thank you. I got a motion second. Yes, Mr. Attorney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Serving Chairman. Of course, depending on the will of the council, I would be delighted to examine any part of the charter and render an opinion. However, I would respectfully suggest that if we're going to go that route, that you first obtain clarification from the source of the memorandum, so I don't end up conflicting myself out from either serving you or the mayor. In other words, I think the basis of my evaluation and examination should be the explanation of what it means. I mean, at this point, all I can tell you is that I took a cursory look at it, and apparently it means what it says. I mean, I'm trying to be as diplomatic as I can here.
I appreciate it.
Let me just sort of put it this way. I don't want to get caught in the middle, because obviously I have two duties. I represent the mayor, and I also represent the council. And to the greatest extent possible, I'd like to keep that arrangement clean. In other words, I'm fond of recollecting in arguments, particularly in Escambia County, where the one party of the other says, look, I don't have a dog in this fight. Well, I don't have a dog in this fight, and I would rather keep my dog out of it until we get some clarity.
Well, could we ask the person then to wrote this memorandum to give us their, to analyze this part? That we can. Oh, yes. Okay, that's true. Well, anyhow, I made a motion in a second.
I think practically what you can do is look at Mr. Reynolds as the mayor's designee and ask him to take your request to whomever.
Thank you. Notwithstanding what we're trying to accomplish here, it would be a sad item if we have to go outside to get legal advice because of the arrangement that council has. I think if we need to have a strict interpretation of the law, however it falls. That would be my opinion. and there is a such thing as retaliation, et cetera, if in fact you're given a legal opinion about what has been requested. And that somewhat bothers me to that extent, that we might have to go beyond the scope of our legal assistance here to get information. And I hope that's not the case.
Well, I think there's a motion on the floor that's been seconded, and I'd like to call it for vote.
Understand. There are some individuals out in the audience who would like to speak. Could I get that? Yes, sir.
Hi, just a question I'd like to pose to the council about this issue. I'm actually a candidate for city council, and in speaking to some of the folks, just for informational purposes, that work with the city, I was told there was one day it was basically the information that you guys deal with that's supposed to be public, you know, it was free flowing. And then the next day it was, oh, the mayor says that you have to take this to the mayor's office as a candidate in order to get an approval to have this discussion or get this information. Now, to me, and there may be a misunderstanding on either part, but I believe that that's almost a constitutional issue. If it's public information that you as employees of the city are dealing with, it should be something that the public should have access to, regardless of if they're a candidate or not. I'm a citizen. So that's just simply my point. It's a question. I don't necessarily need to get an answer, but I just wanted, for the record, to express my also disapproval of this type of, what's the word I'm looking for, this type of mentality. So.
Thank you. To have someone else, yes.
I really believe that you guys need to go back and have the charter redone in some areas. You have no power. You have no power whatsoever. You have an attorney that does not work for you. The school board have their own attorney. The superintendent has his own attorney. His loyalty is to the mayor. No disrespect. You know, the mayor hires everybody. You can't go out and do a contract to hire your attorney to give your opinion, because the mayor is the only one who can write contracts. You can't do anything. We need to have the charter reviewed and have some changes made in the charter. Not the whole charter, but you need to get your power. You don't have any. You have no voice whatsoever. You can't hire anybody. You can't fire anybody. You can't sign contracts. You can't ask questions. Even the city administrator was chastising you for bringing issues back up that you brought up before. You answer to the mayor and his team. You don't do anything on your own. You need to get your powers back for it can be a check and balance. You don't have a check and balance. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
I would like to respond to the last person who spoke. You brought up some very good points. However, the council actually does have quite a bit of power. Well, it depends on whether we want to use it. We do have the power to contract. We can contract for our staff person. We can do that if we want to. So I just don't want the public to believe that we are completely without any remedy. Okay?
Thank you. All right, the question has been called. Could I have a vote? All in favor of the motion? Which,
Councilman Johnson.
Councilman Johnson, would you recite your motion again?
Yes, I would like to have a memorandum, a letter of explanation about exactly what, find my glasses here, 4.02 City Council number 3, to inquire into the conduct. That is the first part of the charter, and then the second part would be 4.04 prohibitions, and that would be the last sentence in A, appointment and removal.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposers? Okay. Yes, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like just to kind of maybe if we can take a step back and one of the interesting things I've as you know, have previously served in the council manager form of government as a manager for counties. And as part of that, we actually had a similar, in the one county that I worked for, we actually had a similar language that actually was adopted as ordinance. And here's the reason why. As someone that tries to run the day-to-day parts of any organization, it's important that, one, we have knowledge as to what's going on in the organization, and especially knowledge of concerns from the governing body. The other part of it is that there are times where, if it's not explicitly stated, there will be, and the reason it's explicitly stated, so everybody understands, is that, you know, direction needs to come from whether it's the council manager form of government or whether it's this form of government, direction needs to come from that individual that's responsible for the day-to-day operations. That's the thought process behind it. Well, that's the thought process that I see behind it. That's the thought process that I see when it comes to any government, is to ensure that the operations of the government are not impacted by a single person. This body has power as a body. And that's why I always encourage the body to take votes, so then we can then move forward. But when it comes to the individual thought process of a single person, that's a different thing. And it's incredibly important, again, to recognize that those that are responsible for running the day-to-day operations, that we keep that information flow. Ms. Myers, in her example, did get the information that she requested. And I just think it's important to understand that those are probably part of the thought process that went into putting the memo together.
Thank you. President DeWeese.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, and I want to thank Mr. Reynolds for his explanation and opinion on this. I do want to point out, from a councilperson perspective, my concern that everything that I do as an individual council member must be blessed by a council as a whole, because we represent individual districts. There are many issues that there is an evolution to an issue. Sometimes I don't know until a month into something the frustration of a citizen, and I finally get the call and they've had it up to here. But I have to investigate that. I have to inquire city staff. I have to do the background on it. And to have to come to council and go, hey, you guys, I have an issue in my neighborhood, you know, just north of me, and I need your blessing to be able to run this through staff. That's illogical, that we are individual representatives. We are not beholden to anyone on council. We as a body vote to make, you know, decisions and approve a budget, but we're individual representatives of our district or at large. So there are going to be situations that I would investigate. I have one right now that is not something that needs to be elevated to a council level until there's more information and more background, quite honestly. So I don't want that to be a staff perspective of absolution, that any inquiry we make has to be blessed by the rest of us. That's not what we're doing here.
Yes.
Mr. President, if I may.
Yes.
That's not what I'm saying, and I apologize if I inartfully said it. I will endeavor to continue to be the individual that can facilitate any concerns that this body has when it comes to getting things done. You know, as soon as I find out about an issue, then I'm going to put the gears in place to try to effectuate a solution to that issue. What I'm saying is that when it comes to directing the organization, then those are the decisions that have to come from the council as a body when it comes to the policy issues. Also understand that this is not that different from, as I understand, and I have not independently verified this, from missives that have went out from Tom Bonfield when he was here, and frankly, missives that I put out when I was the manager of other organizations. And it certainly wasn't meant to be an affront when I did it, and I don't believe it was meant to be an affront at this point.
Yes. Councilman Meyer.
I just want you to realize how what I think is illegal and an infringement on my rights under the charter and the United States Constitution. This policy has a chilling effect on my right to communicate with people. It also affects me as a citizen, and I'll give you a good example. There is a yield sign that was in front of my house where two roads converge. In between those two roads are tall bushes and trees. This is an emergency. You're going to have two cars colliding there. That impacts me individually. It's in front of my property. It's a street that I have to navigate every day, and it's a concern to my neighborhood as the neighborhood association president. But I can't call up Mr. Garza and tell him, you know what, this yield sign is gone. Because I'm a city council person. That's going to, I guarantee you that's what he's going to say to me. But this doesn't, yes, I'm concerned about it as a city council person. I'm concerned about it as Sherry Myers, who has a piece of property and a dangerous situation in front of my house. But because I have the title of city council person, I can't call Mr. Garza to get that addressed. No, I've got to call the mayor's office. Got to call the mayor.
Thank you. I want to close out this conversation.
If I may, sir, I would just humbly request that this body contact me directly with those issues, and I will do everything I can to see that they're taken care of.
We're not allowed to. The memo says the mayor. We're not allowed. That's my issue, is we're not allowed.
We've asked for an interpretation with our motion, so let's deal with this later.
Mr. Vice,
Just a minute. Yes, sir.
could I just please have one small point of clarification, because I know how these things happen once you hit the gavel. The tasking for that interpretation, as I understand it, and just correct me if I'm wrong, is not on my office.
No, he requested that the person that drafted.
Just want to make sure it's.
Yeah. Mrs. Dubinson.
As a citizen who's often asked by some of you council members if I can get some information, I can tell you that I find this is an absolutely ridiculous suggestion on whomever's point it was that drafted it. You folks should have the first and immediate access to any information that the city has, and you should have the ability to go directly to the staff of this great city. I understand the charter says you may not direct them. There's a difference between directing and inquiring, and I believe that this is a real mistake on whomever's decision-making point it was. And if you're listening from above, you know, I think it needs to be corrected. You folks are scrambling for an opportunity these days to communicate clearly, and if you have to wait until someone can conveniently give you the permission to speak to the people who have the information, it just slows things down more. So I ask you to aggressively address this and retain for yourself the ability to go directly to staff, just as any citizen has. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds, you are the day-to-day operator, but the person who wrote this is not the day-to-day operator, and that seems to be the problem. We have a constant changing of who's in charge, and the community gets confused, and the community's tired of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry?
Not hardly open and transparent. I thought that I had directed that to the city attorney. I did not. Okay, so who is going to give us a memorandum about those two?
We can only ask the mayor.
Mr. Reynolds?
No, I think the motion was that the person that drafted
This memorandum, well, that would be Mr. Asmar. Let's go ahead and say his name. So
I don't know who drafted it. Is that who drafted it?
Well, we know that Mr. Reynolds didn't and Mr. Messer didn't, and we know the mayor probably didn't, so that only leaves one other person, unless there's Casper the Ghost up there on the 7th floor that maybe slid in and out and wrote it. But
okay. So I think that's what the motion said.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
anything else?
So who's going to?
Just one more comment, if I may be given the opportunity to do so.
Yes, sir.
And all of you know me well enough by now to know that I will remind you of things gone past. I was one of the individuals, in fact, I was the individual that asked us as a council to take, when we were about to vote on the charter as it's written today, I had asked the council to give ourselves 2 weeks to evaluate it and look at what was really in there, to develop the proper interpretation and understanding of where all of it was going. I was outvoted. And what we did at that time, we missed the opportunity to open that book and find out what was in it. And thus, here we are. I just want to remind you, and when I bring you an idea, y'all better listen. Because we should have listened in and we wouldn't be doing this foolishness.
Thank you, sir.
But this is Mickey Mouse CO. Thank you.